Hey there, everyone. Today I would like to read a few small passages from Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer. Now, Henry Miller is a very influential, exciting, and interesting, and sort of esoteric author. Writing in the 30s, Tropic of Cancer, as well as the subsequent Tropic of Capricorn, have been tremendously influential on the Beat generation, on the countercultural movement, and even into theory. They're explicitly quoted in Deleuze and Guattari's A Thousand Plateaus, and I also think that he probably influenced Jean Baudrillard to an extent. He shows a lot of Nietzschean as well as Shakespearean and Rabelaisian influence throughout, and I would like to read a few passages that I think really help to understand the scope and breadth of this work of art. Rarely do I read pieces of literature that I can call a work of art. But to me, Tropic of Cancer combines Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra with Shakespeare's Hamlet. And it truly, truly does that. There are sort of two Millers that we see in Tropic of Cancer. There's Miller the man and Miller the inhuman. The man is just the ordinary person going throughout his life between banalities and extreme circumstances, like almost dying in a cot in an artist friend's studio. And then Miller the inhuman is this sort of cosmic, pantheistic, esoteric, explosive, dangerous force that burgeons out through a crack, a hairy crack. And I'm going to read from a passage where we see such a crack open. And what's tremendously exciting about Miller is that the world just randomly opens up. It almost happens at comedic moments sometimes. Sometimes it's not comedic at all. It's just inconsequential moments. And I find him very beautiful. I find his writing just exciting and, frankly, incredibly enjoyable. There is a tremendous breadth of emotion and affect and aesthetic which he is able to achieve like few authors I have ever read have been able to. And some things that we ought to focus on are the ways that he considers the triumph of the human will and spirit, as Friedrich Nietzsche does. Also ideas of chaos, of cyclical history, of circles, of the theme of the world as a sort of feminine force of a womb that gives birth to new things. One would do well to read this alongside Deleuze's Difference in Repetition. That would be a very, very interesting read for sure. And there are so many instances here that just strike me as they might as well have come out of Thus Spoke Zarathustra or A Thousand Plateaus or some other work. The whole run of flesh, from hair to nails, expresses the miracle of breathing, as if the inner eye, in its thirst for a greater reality, had converted the pores of the flesh into hungry, seething mouths. By whatever vision one passes, there is the odor and the sound of voyage. It is impossible to gaze at even a corner of his dreams without feeling the lift of the wave and the cool of the flying spray. He stands at the helm, peering with steady blue eyes into the portfolio of time. Into what distant corners has he not thrown his long, slanting gaze? Looking down the vast promontory of his nose, he has beheld everything, the Cordilleras falling away into the Pacific, the history of the diaspora done in vellum, shutters flying the frou-frou of the beach, the piano curving like a conch, corollas giving out diapasons of light, chameleons squirming under the book press, seraglios expiring in oceans of dust, music issuing like fire from the hidden chromosphere of pain, spore and madrepore fructifying the earth, navels vomiting their bright spawn of anguish. He is a bright sage, a dancing seer who, with a sweep of the brush, removes the ugly scaffold to which the body of a man is chained by the incontrovertible facts of life. He it is, if any man today possesses the gift, who knows where to dissolve the human figure, who has the courage to sacrifice an harmonious line in order to detect the rhythm and murmur of the blood, who takes the light that has been refracted inside him and lets it flood the keyboard of color. Behind the minutiae, the chaos, the mockery of life, he detects the invisible pattern. He announces his discoveries in the metaphysical pigment of space. No searching for formulae, no crucifixion of ideas, no compulsion other than to create. Even as the world goes to smash, there is one man who remains at the core, who becomes more solidly fixed and anchored, more centrifugal as the process of dissolution quickens. More and more the world resembles an entomologist's dream. The earth is moving out of its orbit. The axis has shifted. From the north, the snow blows down in huge knife-blue drifts. A new age is setting in. The transverse sutures are closing up, and everywhere throughout the corn belt the fetal world is dying, turning to dead mastoid. Inch by inch, the deltas are drying out, and the riverbeds are smooth as glass. A new day is dawning, a metallurgical day, when the earth shall clink with showers of bright yellow ore. As the thermometer drops, the form of the world grows blurred. Osmosis there still is, and here and there articulation, but at the periphery the veins are all varicose. At the periphery the light waves bend, and the sun bleeds like a broken rectum. In this second passage, we find Miller achieving one of these esoteric, mystical states amid an orgy. He says, the girls have undressed, and we're examining the floor to make sure that they won't get any splinters in their ass. They're still wearing their high-heeled shoes, but the ass is worn down, scraped, sandpapered, smooth, hard, bright as a billiard ball or the skull of a leper. On the wall is Mona's picture. She's facing northeast on a line with Krakow written in green ink. To the left of her is the Dordogne, encircled with a red pencil. Suddenly, I see a dark, hairy crack in front of me, set in a bright, polished billiard ball. The legs are holding me like a pair of scissors. A glance at that dark, unstitched wound, and a deep fissure in my brain opens up. All the images and memories that had been laboriously or absent-mindedly assorted, labeled, documented, filled, sealed, and stamped break forth pell-mell like ants pouring out of the crack in a sidewalk. The world ceases to revolve. Time stops. The very nexus of my dreams is broken and dissolved, and my guts spill out in a grand schizophrenic rush, an evacuation that leaves me face to face with the absolute. I see again the great sprawling mothers of Picasso, their breasts covered with spiders, their legend hidden deep in the labyrinth, and Molly Bloom lying on a dirty mattress for eternity. On the toilet door, red chalk cocks and the Madonna uttering the diapason of woe. I hear a wild, hysterical laugh. A room full of lockjaw, and the body that was black grows like phosphorus. Wild, wild, utterly uncontrollable laughter, and that crack laughing at me too, laughing through the mossy whiskers, a laugh that creates the bright, polished surface of the billiard ball. Great whore and mother of man, with gin in her veins, mother of all harlots, spider rolling us in your logarithmic grave, insatiable one, fiend whose laughter rives me. I look down into that sunken crater. world lost and without traces, and I hear the bells chiming, 2 nuns at the Palace Stanislaus, and the smell of rancid butter underneath their dresses. Manifesto never printed because it was raining. War fought to further the cause of plastic surgery. The Prince of Wales flying around the world, decorating the graves of unknown heroes. Every bat flying out of the belfry a lost cause, every whooplah a groan over the radio. From the private trenches of the damned, out of that dark, unstitched wound, that sink of abominations, that cradle of black-thronged cities where the music of ideas is drowned in cold fat. Out of strangled utopias is born a clown, a being divided between beauty and ugliness, between light and chaos. A clown who, when he looks down and sidelong, is Satan himself, and when he looks upwards, sees a buttered angel, a snail with wings. When I look down into that crack, I see an equation sign, the world at balance, a world reduced to zero and no trace of remainder. Not the zero on which Van Norden turned his flashlight, not the empty crack of the prematurely disillusioned man, but an Arabian zero, rather. The sign from which spring endless mathematical worlds, the fulcrum which balances the stars, and the light dreams, and the machines lighter than air, and the lightweight limbs, and the explosives that produce them. Into that crack I would like to penetrate up to the eyes, make them waggle ferociously, dear, crazy, metallurgical eyes. When the eyes waggle, then will I hear again Dostoevsky's words, hear them rolling on page after page with minutest observation, with maddest introspection, with all the undertones of misery now lightly, humorously touched, now swelling like an organ note until the heart bursts and there is nothing left but a blinding, scorching light, the radiant light that carries off the fecundating seeds of the stars, the story of art whose roots lie in massacre. When I look down into this fucked-out cunt of a whore, I feel the whole world behind me, a world tottering and crumbling, a world used up and polished like a leper's skull. If there were a man who dared to say all that he thought of this world, there would not be left him a square foot of ground to stand on. When a man appears, the world bears down on him and breaks his back. There are always too many rotten pillars left standing, too much festering humanity for man to bloom. The superstructure is a lie, and the foundation is a huge quaking fear. If at intervals of centuries there does appear a man with a desperate, hungry look in his eye, a man who would turn the world upside down in order to create a new race, the love that he brings the world is turned to bile, and he becomes a scourge. If now and then we encounter pages that explode, pages that wound and sear, that bring groans and tears and curses, know that they come from a man with his back up, a man whose only defenses left are his words, and his words are always stronger than the lying, crushing weight of the world, stronger than all the racks and wheels which the cowardly invent to crush out the miracle of personality. If any man has ever dared to translate all that is in his heart, to put down what is really his experience, what is truly his truth, I think then the world would go to smash, that it would be blown to smithereens, and no God, no accident, no will could ever again assemble to pieces the atoms, the indestructible elements that have gone to make up the world. In the 400 years since the last devouring soul appeared, the last man to know the meaning of ecstasy, there has been a constant and steady decline of man, in art, in thought, in action. The world is pooped out. There isn't a dry fart left. Who that has a desperate, hungry eye can have the slightest regard for these existent governments, laws, codes, principles, ideals, ideas, totems, and taboos? If anyone knew what it meant to read the riddle of that thing which today is called a crack or a hole, If anyone had the least feeling of mystery about the phenomena which are labeled obscene, this world would crack asunder. It is the obscene horror, the dry, fucked out aspect of things which makes this crazy civilization look like a crater. It is this great yawning gulf of nothingness which the creative spirits and mothers of the race carry between their legs. When a hungry, desperate spirit appears and makes the guinea pig squeal, it is because he knows where to put the live wire of sex, because he knows that beneath the hard carapace of indifference there is concealed the ugly gash, the wound that never heals. And he puts the live wire right between the legs. He hits below the belt, scorches the very gizzards. It is no use putting on rubber gloves. All that can be coolly and intellectually handled belongs to the carapace, and a man who is intent on creation always dives beneath, to the open wound, to the festering obscene horror. He hitches his dynamo to the tenderest parts. If only blood and pus gush forth, it is something. The dry, fucked-out crater is obscene. More obscene than anything is inertia. More blasphemous than the bloodiest oath is paralysis. If there is only a gaping wound left, then it must gush forth, though it produce nothing but toads and bats and homunculi. Everything is packed into a second, which is either consummated or not consummated. The earth is not an arid plateau of health and comfort, but a great sprawling female with velvet torso that swells and heaves with ocean billows. She squirms beneath a diadem of sweat and anguish. Naked and sexed, she rolls among the clouds in the violet light of the stars. All of her, from the generous breasts to her gleaming thighs, blazes with furious ardor. She moves amongst the seasons and the years with a grand whoopla that seizes the torso with paroxysmal fury, that shakes the cobwebs out of the sky. She subsides on her pivotal orbits with volcanic tremors. She's like a doe at times, a doe that has fallen into a snare and lies waiting with beating heart for the cymbals to crash and the dogs to bark. Love and hate, despair, pity, rage, disgust, what are these amidst the fornications of the planets? What is war, disease, cruelty, terror, when night presents the ecstasy of myriad blazing suns? What is this chaff we chew in our sleep, if it is not the remembrance of fang whirl and star cluster? Suddenly Miller's thoughts shift from the aforementioned passage to Mona, his wife, who is still overseas in the States, as he hopefully awaits her arrival for several months at this point in Paris. He says, "She used to say to me, Mona, in her fits of exultation, 'You're a great human being.' And though she left me here to perish, though she put beneath my feet a great howling pit of emptiness, the words that lie at the bottom of my soul leap forth, and they light the shadows below me. I am one who was lost in the crowd, whom the fizzing lights made dizzy, a zero who saw everything about him reduced to mockery. Past me men and women ignited with sulfur, porters in calcium livery, opening the jaws of hell. Fame walkers on crutches, dwindled by the skyscrapers, chewed to a frazzle by the spiked mouth of the machines. I walked between the tall buildings toward the cool of the river, and I saw the lights shoot up between the ribs of the skeleton like rockets. If I was truly a great human being, as she said, then what was the meaning of this slavering idiocy about me? I saw a man with body and soul. I had a heart that was not protected by a steel vault. I had moments of ecstasy, and I sang with burning sparks. I sang of the equator, her red feathered legs, and the islands drooping out of sight, but nobody heard. A gun fired across the Pacific falls into space because the earth is round and pigeons fly upside down. I saw her looking at me across the table with eyes turned to grief. Sorrow, spreading inward, flattened its nose against her spine. The marrow, churned to pity, had turned liquid. She was light as a corpse that floats in the Dead Sea. Her fingers bled with anguish, and the blood turned to drool. With the wet dawn came the tolling of bells, and along the fibers of my nerves the bells played ceaselessly, and their tongues pounded in my heart and clanged with iron malice. Strange that the bells should toll so. But stranger still, the body bursting. This woman turned to night, and her maggot words gnawing through the mattress. I moved along under the equator, heard the hideous laughter of the green-jawed hyena, saw the jackal with silken tail and the dik-dik and the spotted leopard, all left behind in the Garden of Eden. And then her sorrow widened, like the bow of a dreadnought, and the weight of her sinking flooded my ears. Slime wash and sapphires, slipping, sluicing through the gray neurons, and the spectrum spliced and the gunwales dipping. Soft as lion pad, I heard the gun carriages turn, saw them vomit and drool. The firmament sagged, and all the stars turned black. Black ocean bleeding, and the brooding stars breeding chunks of fresh swollen flesh, while overhead the birds wheeled, and out of the hallucinated sky fell the balance with mortar and pestle, and the bandaged eyes of justice. All that is here related moves with imaginary feet along the parallels of dead orbs. All that is seen with the empty sockets burst with flowering grass. Out of nothingness arises the sign of infinity. Beneath the ever-rising spirals slowly sink the gaping hole. The land and the water make hummers joined, a poem written with flesh and stronger than steel or granite. Through endless night, the earth whirls toward a great creation unknown. As if this work could not become vivacious and ecstatic enough, he continues, "Show me a man who over-elaborates, and I will show you a great man." What is called their over-elaboration is my meat. It is the sign of struggle. It is the struggle itself, with all the fibers clinging to it, the very aura and the ambience of the discordant spirit. And when you show me a man who expresses himself perfectly, I will not say that he is not great, but I will say that I am unattracted. I miss the cloying qualities. When I reflect that the task which the artist implicitly sets himself is to overthrow existing values, to make of the chaos about him an order which is his own, to sow strife and ferment so that by the emotional release those who are dead may be restored to life, then it is that I run with joy to the great and imperfect ones. Their confusion nourishes me. Their stuttering is like divine music to my ears. I see in the beautifully bloated pages that follow the interruptions, the erasure of petty intrusions, of the dirty footprints, as it were, of cowards, liars, thieves, vandals, calumniators. I see in the swollen muscles of their lyric throats the staggering effort that must be made to turn the wheel over, to pick up the pace where one has left off. I see that behind the daily annoyances and intrusions, behind the cheap, glittering malice of the feeble and inert, there stands the symbol of life's frustrating power, and that he who would create order, he who would sow strife and discord, because he is imbued with will, such a man must go again and again to the stake and the gibbet. I see that behind the nobility of his gestures there lurks the specter of the ridiculousness of it all, that he is not only sublime, but absurd. Once I thought that to be human was the highest aim a man could have, but I see now that it was meant to destroy me. Today I am proud to say that I am inhuman, that I belong not to men and governments, that I have nothing to do with creeds and principles. I have nothing to do with the creaking machinery of humanity. I belong to the earth. I say that lying on my pillow, and I can feel the horns sprouting from my temples. I can see about me all those cracked forebears of mine dancing around the bed, consoling me, egging me on, lashing me with their serpent tongues, grinning and leering at me with their sculling skulls. I am inhuman. I say it with a mad, hallucinated grin, and I will keep on saying it, though it rains crocodiles. Behind my words are all those grinning, leering, skulking skulls, some dead and grinning a long time, some grinning as if they had lockjaw, some grinning with the grimace of a grin, the foretaste and aftermath of what is always going on. Clearer than all, I see my own grinning skull, see the skeleton dancing in the wind, serpents issuing from the rotted tongue in the bloated pages of ecstasy, slimed with excrement. And I join my slime, my excrement, my madness, my ecstasy to the great circuit which flows through the subterranean vaults of the flesh. All this unbidden, unwanted, drunken vomit will flow on endlessly through the minds of those to come, in the inexhaustible vessel that contains the history of the race. Side by side with the human race there runs another race of beings, the inhuman ones. The race of artists who, goaded by unknown impulses, take the lifeless mass of humanity, and by the fever and torment with which they imbue it, turn this soggy dough into bread, and the bread into wine, and the wine into song. Out of the dead compost and the inert slag, they breed a song that contaminates. I see this other race of individuals ransacking the universe, turning everything upside down, their feet always moving in blood and tears, their hands always empty, always clutching and grasping for the beyond, for the God out of reach, slaying everything within reach in order to quiet the monster that gnaws at their vitals. I see that when they tear hair with the effort to comprehend, to seize this, forever unattainable, I see that when they bellow like crazed beasts and rip and gore, I see that this is right, that there is no other path to pursue. A man who belongs to this race must stand up on the high place with gibberish in his mouth and rip out his entrails. It is right and just because he must. And anything that falls short of this frightening spectacle, anything less shuddering, less terrifying, less mad, less intoxicated, less contaminating, is not art. The rest is counterfeit. The rest is human. The rest belongs to life and lifelessness. Today I am aware of my lineage. I have no need to consult my horoscope or my genealogical chart. What is written in the stars or in my blood, I know nothing of. I know that I spring from the mythological foundations of the race. The man who raises the holy bottle to his lips, the criminal who kneels in the marketplace, the innocent one who discovers that all corpses stink, the madman who dances with lightning in his hands, the friar who lifts his skirts to pee over the world, the fanatic who ransacks libraries in order to find the word. All these are fused in me. All these make my confusion, my ecstasy. If I am inhuman, it is because my world has slopped over its human bounds. Because to be human seems like a poor, sorry, miserable affair, limited by the senses, restricted by modalities and codes, defined by platitudes and isms. I am pouring the juice of the grape down my gullet, and I find wisdom in it. But my wisdom is not born of the grape. My intoxication owes nothing to wine. I want to make a detour of those lofty, arid mountain ranges where one dies of thirst and cold. That extratemporal history, that absolute of time and space where there exists neither man, beast, nor vegetation. Where one goes crazy with loneliness, with language that is mere words. Where everything is unhooked, ungeared, out of joint with the times. I want a world of men and women, of trees that do not talk, because there is too much talk in the world as it is, of rivers that carry you to places, not rivers that are legends, but rivers that put you in touch with other men and women, with architecture, religion, plants, animals, rivers that have boats on them and in which men drown not in myth and legend and books and dust of the past, but in time and space and history. I want rivers that make oceans such as Shakespeare and Dante, rivers which do not dry up in the void of the past. Oceans, yes. Let us have more oceans, new oceans that blot out the past, oceans that create new geological formations, new topographical vistas, and strange, terrifying continents. Oceans that destroy and preserve at the same time. Oceans that we can sail on, take off to new discoveries, new horizons. Let us have more oceans, more upheavals, more wars, more holocausts. Let us have a world of men and women with dynamos between their legs. A world of natural fury, of passion, action, drama, dreams, madness. A world that produces ecstasy and not dry farts. I believe that today, more than ever, a book should be sought after, even if it has only one great page in it. We must search for fragments, splinters, toenails, anything that has ore in it, anything that is capable of resuscitating the body and soul. It may be that we are doomed, that there is no hope for us, any of us. But if that is so, then let us set up a last agonizing, blood-curdling howl, a screech of defiance, a war whoop. Away with lamentation, away with elegies and dirges, away with biographies and histories and libraries and museums. Let the dead eat the dead. Let us living ones dance about the rim of the crater, a last expiring dance, but a dance. I love everything that flows, said the great blind Milton of our times. I was thinking of him this morning when I woke with a great bloody shout of joy. I was thinking of his rivers and trees and all that world of night which he's exploring. Yes, I said to myself, I too love everything that flows. Rivers, sewers, lava, semen, blood, bile, words, sentences. I love the amniotic fluid when it spills out of the bag. I love the kidney with its painful gallstones, its gravel and whatnot. I love the urine that pours out scalding and the clap that runs endlessly. I love the words of hysterics and the sentences that flow on like dysentery and mirror all the sick images of the soul. I love the great rivers like the Amazon and the Orinoco, where a crazy man like Moravagine float on through dream and legend in an open boat and drown in the blind mouths of the river. I love everything that flows, even the menstrual flow that carries away the seed unfecund. I love scripts that flow, be they hieratic, esoteric, perverse, polymorph, or unilateral. I love everything that flows, everything that has time in it and becoming, that brings us back to the beginning where there is never end. The violence of the prophets, the obscenity that is ecstasy, the wisdom of the fanatic, the priest with his rubber litany, the foul words of the whore, the spittle that flows away in the gutter, the milk of the breast and the bitter honey that pours from the womb. All that is fluid, melting, dissolute, and dissolvent, all the pus and dirt that in flowing is purified, that loses its sense of origin, that makes the great circuit toward death and dissolution. The great incestuous wish is to flow on, one with time, to merge the great image of the beyond with the here and now. A fatuous, suicidal wish that is constipated by words and paralyzed by thought.